I'm teaching my kids to eat real food, but if they don't know how to make it, when they leave home, they're going to be right back in the ramen noodle and frozen pizza aisles. It's not sustainable if you don't have the skills to do it. What if you just teach them to measure a teaspoon of salt? That's going to take 5 minutes of your time. Okay. And then the next time you're making dinner, now you can say, all right, I'm making chicken turmeric soup tonight. I need black pepper, I need salt, and I need turmeric. You put those out on the table. This is for a kid as young as 3 or 5 to get them involved. And you can set out the measuring spoons and a little bowl for them to measure into. You have them measure. And then at dinner, you get to say, oh, this soup tastes so good. You know why it tastes so good? Because it's got the right amount of salt and pepper and turmeric in it.
Hey there, I'm Kaylin Wood, and this is Money Matters for Moms, the show where busy moms turn overwhelm into abundance. Each week we'll talk side hustles, saving hacks, wealth tips, and some energy tips to help make it all stick. Real tools for real financial freedom. No ramen required. I'm here today with Katie Kimball. Katie is a cookbook author, a 2-time TEDx speaker, and a regular TV contributor. Her e-course, Kids Cook Real Food, helps parents build family connection while teaching their kids to cook. And in 2020, the Wall Street Journal named it the best online cooking class for kids. She shares her passion for real food through her blog, Kitchen Stewardship, which helps families stay healthy without going crazy. Katie, welcome. I'm so glad you're here.
Thank you, Kaylin. This will be fun to talk about because I love empowering moms.
So, first of all, can you tell us the difference between food and what you call real food?
Sure. Real food to me is things that are grown in the ground or animals that eat things that are grown in the ground. And over the last many decades, food has sort of been redefined to be anything we put in our mouth, where I would argue that if it's made in a food processing plant, if it's designed by scientists, we're starting to edge out of food and into some sort of food product. And so since I started online in 2009, I've always been kind of waving that banner and putting out the call that we need to return to our roots a little bit. We need to focus a lot more on basic fruits, vegetables, grains, meats, dairy, and just eat food that our bodies were more designed to eat.
So, how was it that you decided that teaching your own kids to cook was critical?
I had a little bit of a twofold crisis. So this happened when my oldest son was 10. So he was just over that halfway point of, oh my goodness, I'm like halfway finished parenting him. And I had been working online about 7 years at that time and teaching other families to cook and getting people excited about real food. And my son did this how-to speech at the end of a school year. You could teach anything. You could teach like how to swing a baseball bat or how to raise a caterpillar. So in front of his class, he chose to teach how to make homemade guacamole. And I got to be there because you can't put a chef's knife in a fourth grader's backpack. So I was one of the few adults in the room. And I'm watching him thwack the pit out of the avocado. And the other adults are going, oh my gosh, that's so scary. And I was super proud because I love when my kids raise the bar on, what expectations are. But then I also had a little bit of my own crisis of like, oh my gosh, guacamole is the only thing he knows how to make. And I'm past the halfway point in parenting. And here I have been waving this banner of real food for 7 years now. And I'm teaching my kids to eat real food, but if they don't know how to make it, when they leave home, they're going to be right back in the ramen noodle and frozen pizza aisles. It's not sustainable if you don't have the skills to do it. So I thought, okay, my kids need this for their future. And I was also hitting the point we had our fourth child in the last year at that point. And every time you add a child, it adds to the chaos. And I was starting to feel like I was spending so much time at the cutting board feeding the people that I was not even seeing them. I wasn't spending time with my people. And so for those two reasons, I thought this has got to be a change. This is a skill I very much want my kids to have. And the busyness of life has pulled me beyond remembering to pull them back into the kitchen. And also, I needed help. We needed to share that family responsibility and spend time together in the kitchen, since that's where I was spending so much of my time. And it ended up being all a very, very good thing. But that was sort of my dual crisis, was they need this later and I need them to have this now.
Well, speaking of kids, I know that both of us really enjoy children's books, and we talked about the Ramona books by Beverly Cleary. They've got some really funny food stories in them. What's your favorite?
They do. Well, I started life as a third grade teacher, and I had these 4 girls all reading one of the Ramona books. I don't even know which one, but I came upon, I was walking around the room as these kids are talking in small groups about the different novels they were reading. And these girls are deep in intense conversation because they're not understanding this scene where Ramona and her sister Beezus are in charge of cooking dinner and they're pulling the skin off of a whole chicken. And these third graders, so this is like early 2000s, but the book is set probably in the 80s or 70s. And so in the early 2000s, these girls are like not understanding the scene. What do you mean skin? And I think it's this and I think it's that. And why is it so slippery? And I don't understand. And I'm just listening in awe as my brain is clunking to the realization of they've never seen any kind of bone-in skin on chicken. Not a whole chicken, probably not bone-in skin on breasts or thighs. It's boneless, skinless chicken breasts. If they've seen it in the uncooked form at all, right? As 8 and 9 year olds. And it was just this funny realization to me, like how the world changed in just a few decades. Where I would say in the 70s and 80s, most kids at least sort of knew where their food come from. Dial back another few decades, for sure they did, before the advent of highly processed foods. And now we're to this point where kids, they really don't know where their food comes from. And I recall another story of an inner city class that visited a farm as a field trip. And this little girl just started screaming as they were served lunch because there was a leaf attached to the stem of her apple. And it freaked her out. She thought it was dirty and gross. She had no idea apples grew on trees next to leaves. Just that's how far we've come. And I really do want to connect not only my kids, but like everybody's kids to how food works, where it comes from, that it fuels our bodies. There's this whole process, and it's been disconnected at a number of points in our modern society.
So obviously, cooking with real food is going to help our bodies to be more healthy, but how can it also help moms to save money?
Oh man, it's so important. Here's the thing. Marketers like to tell us that faster food is better because it will save us time. Whether that's actual fast food, going to a restaurant or getting hot and ready pizzas, or just buying a lot of the pre-made convenience foods. And sometimes those are very cheap. Ramen noodles, mac and cheese. So that's very inexpensive. But if we're really going to fuel our bodies, first of all, spending a little more is worth it. But second of all, if you're cooking from scratch using whole ingredients, you really, really can save a lot of money. And I always come back to meal planning as well. Like if you are meal planning well, you're going to waste so much less food. I forget if it's 25% or 40% of the food that average consumers buy gets thrown away. Like, hello, we're spending money for food. We're throwing the food into the trash. If you can plan well how to simply use what you buy, you're saving a ton of money right there. And then it comes down to some of my favorite techniques for saving money. And this has been honestly same stuff since 2009, is making homemade chicken broth, making homemade yogurt, and cooking with dry beans. Those are such seriously frugal techniques, and none of them take a ton of time. That's what I'm all about, is like, where's that intersection of saving time and saving money? I mean, homemade bone broth is incredibly nourishing. You're capturing a ton of collagen from the bones and some vitamins and minerals, and it's super cheap. So you can buy a rotisserie chicken, you can buy that whole chicken like Ramona and Beezus. You don't have to pull the skin off. And you just put either the whole chicken or the bones that are left from the rotisserie chicken your family just ate into a pot, cover it with water, add onion skins, carrot ends, and celery ends, which literally costs 0 cents to me. Like every time I cut carrots or celery or onions, I put the waste, the parts I would usually throw away, into a bag in the freezer. When I'm ready to make chicken broth, that bag goes into my broth. That's it. And water. So it's literally pennies on the dollar, especially if we've already eaten the chicken, but you're going to eat the chicken either way. You make that broth. And then what it does for me is, like, right now, I know I have a big bowl of broth in the garage because it's Michigan and it's winter. So my whole garage is like refrigerator temp, and it's going to push me like, man, I'm tired. I don't want to make dinner tonight. We could just order in. We could get Chipotle or get some pizza or find some convenience food in the freezer, but I'm not going to because I have this broth waving at me like, Katie, I'm ready to be made into soup. You need to make soup. So it pushes me to make a big batch of nourishing soup. I do know that later Katie will thank today Katie because we'll have leftovers, and I can pull my kids in to make a big batch of soup. So tonight we're making chicken turmeric soup. I need to cut up a cauliflower. I need to cut up some onions and some carrots. Because my kids have these skills, I can send each one to a different area of the kitchen or to the table with their own vegetable. We can all chop. We can make this huge, massive pot of soup that's pennies on the dollar compared to buying it pre-processed, pre-packaged. Way more nutritious, and the whole family has worked on it. That is just such a huge money saver that I think people should be probably eating all year round. But you can apply that to a lot of things. How can you reduce waste, get the kids involved to improve your time that you're spending, which means you open up some time to maybe work on your side hustle or stand here and do an interview.
Exactly. And also, there are other positive effects from cooking together. So, what other good things come out of cooking together as a family?
Well, at Kids Cook Real Food, I call them our 3 C's: connection, confidence, and creativity. And you heard my origin None of these were part of the reasons that I started teaching my kids to cook. These are the benefits I've seen since they've learned to cook, and it's been reflected in thousands of families that I work with around the world. When we talk about connection, it's that connection to your food that we've already talked about, understanding where it comes from and how it fuels your body, but also the connection to the other people in your family. When you're working side by side like that and trying to get dinner ready and sharing the load, not only is that a good feeling, but also it's where kids will really tell you their stories and where maybe you tell them more stories. Your grandma teaching you this such and such a cooking method. So there's a massive connection that I see over and over again among families. The confidence can't be understated. I just feel like we're in this world where our kids are full of anxiety and people are smashing their confidence left and right. Kids don't trust themselves. And so what do they need? They need real authentic tasks to do that then can garner real authentic praise that matters. So if they're nourishing another human being, like there's no more authentic task. If they're using a knife and a stove and things that they see adults doing, that's a huge level up from doing a craft or completing your artwork or reading this many pages in a book. All those are good things, but nourishing another human being is like, it's real work, and people will definitely compliment your kids. You can very easily compliment your kids, and they just feel it. When the family is eating something that the child has made and everyone's saying, oh, this is so good, they glow. And I've thought this for years, that the confidence built in the kitchen spills into other areas of life. Like I've seen it happen, but recently this was confirmed by a social worker I interviewed. She said, absolutely. Like there is one bucket of confidence for a person. If you're more confident in an area, you are a more confident person. And so for kids to have this confidence that I can do real, authentic adult tasks, oh, it's just so powerful in every area of their life. That's my favorite one, actually. And creativity is the third C. And that's important too, especially in this world of screens. We're not really doing with our hands enough. We're not creating as much as we used to in decades past. And so it's really good, especially for kids who like to be busy in their bodies. Really good to give them some bread dough to knead and some stuff to cut up. It doesn't have to be sharp knives. It can be dull knives. That's okay. You know, the lettuce knife for cutting bananas with a butter knife, like all of this counts. They're working with their hands and creating something. And there's also that element of artistic creativity too, where to watch a kid take a recipe and tweak a little something or add their own herbs and spices, it pulls back in that confidence, but it's such a cool feeling for them to be able to confidently take a recipe an adult has written, change it a little bit, know how ingredients fit together. It's awesome to watch that creativity in the kitchen.
That's fantastic. But sometimes when you're teaching kids how to cook, it takes a lot longer at first because you have to walk them through each step. Do you have any tips to help people with that?
You know, it's true. And that's a big roadblock for parents. They say, oh, my kids are going to be too slow. They're going to slow me down. So I say, don't teach right before dinner. It's tricky because they'll ask right at dinner when you're pulling your hair out and you've got like a deadline. Usually, if dinner's late, things cascade later in the evening, right? Either bedtime's late or you're missing an event. So what's important, I think, is that you do some teaching when the kids are full and happy. There's no time pressure. So after snack on a weekday after school or a weekend morning after breakfast or after lunch, they're already in the kitchen. You can be like, all right, I'm going to teach you something. And then step two of that, just think about one skill. I think it's overwhelming sometimes for parents to think, oh, I want to teach my kids to cook. Like that's huge. But even to think, oh, I want to teach my kids this muffin recipe, maybe that's too big because you don't have 45 or 60 minutes in your day. But what if you just teach them to measure a teaspoon of salt? What if you just teach them to crack eggs one day? What if you just teach them to turn on the oven and put the muffin tin in? When we think about just making muffins, there's 7 to 10 different basic building blocks that you need to know to make those muffins. So if we can break things down into smaller pieces, I think that's so much less overwhelming for parents. And even just knowing how to measure a teaspoon, teach that. It's going to take 5 minutes of your time. And then the next time you're making dinner, now you can say, all right, I'm making chicken turmeric soup tonight. I need black pepper, I need salt, and I need turmeric. You put those out on the table. This is for a kid as young as 3 or 5 to get them involved. And you can set out the measuring spoons in a little bowl for them to measure into. You have them measure. They are not slowing you down. You are in a different room, but you've taught them to measure. And then the child measures each bit. If you're worried that it's not right, you check it before you put it in. Don't let them see you do that. And then at dinner, you get to say, oh, this soup tastes so good. You know why it tastes so good? Because it's got the right amount of salt and pepper and turmeric in it. Now, like who was it? Who was it that measured that for me? Again, and this is the little kid voice. Obviously, you got a 12-year-old, 13-year-old, you're using a much different tone of voice. But the point is that the smallest contribution to the meal can still be really monumental, and you still have an opportunity to build their confidence, even when you've only taught them to measure a level teaspoon.
That's incredible.
I'm all about families saving money and saving time. So we know that when our kids are involved in the kitchen, we can share that responsibility. That can open up some time for you to do something else. And also, I just think being more comfortable in the kitchen in general and learning some of those techniques like the broth and the beans and the homemade yogurt can really save a lot of money. And like you say, if you're going to be a millionaire mom, you can make more money or you can spend less, right?
That is really exciting. Thank you, Katie, so much. It's been such a pleasure talking with you.
Thanks, Caitlin.
Thanks for tuning in to Money Matters for Moms. I hope today's episode left you inspired to take one little step forward. Check out the resources in the show notes and share this with another mom who's ready to thrive. You've got this, because abundance is easier than you might think.